Ladies and gentlemen, may I present the Jonson Loredo T25-R. This guy is going to be the star in our little video series about tube amps. Tube for noobs. This is a great tube amp for someone to get into with their first experimentation in tube amps. Got a lot going for it. Has a lot of shortcomings too, which is kind of fun because that means we get to play with it. So if this series goes well enough, garners interest, and there's questions folks want to ask about tube amps for no bullshit and no mystifying answers, we'll do that. But until then, we're just going to work on this amp as a case study in all things tube amps. So let me get it set down and let's take a look. Alright, the Jensen Loredo. Okay, what are we going to do with this guy? The good things about it are it's cheap, it's got good components in it, and it's very well built. So hooray for all that. The downside is I've never seen one with a stock speaker. This has been retrofitted with a Jensen MOD speaker. Everybody seems to be putting different speakers in these amps when they have them. So I'm guessing the stock speaker, not so good. Also, there's very commonly modifications done to the filter caps, and we'll talk more about that. The previous owner did modify that, but he didn't say how, so we're going to have to open it up, look at it, and then figure out whether that change actually made any sense. The complaint I've heard is that it's excessively noisy. The worst fault this amp has is right here. This knob labeled gain is nothing of the sort. It's a really, really irritating piece of design and construction, and in my experience or opinion, because yeah, who cares, right? But anyway, I think this ruins the amp. Now you can still use it; it's a good sounding amp, but oh god, it's annoying. So we'll get into the details about what is in store for this, but what we're going to do is take this circuit out and replace this with an actual traditional volume knob that will attenuates the preamp section. It has a master volume knob that attenuates the signal before it goes to the power amp section. So this way we can adjust the actual gain, if you will. It's more of an attenuation than a gain, but independently we can attenuate signals in the preamp and the power amp at the same time, which gives you all of the wonderful sonic beauty and sandboxy wonderfulness that tube amps should provide. Alright, hang on, let me get the paperwork and we'll see what we're going to do. Okay, don't be afraid of schematics. They're your friends. Oh, I just realized my phone's stand is actually preventing me from getting closer. So let me make a quick mod. Unfortunately, I can only print on 8.5 by 11, so that means tiny. Okay, so there's our input, and I am using a 1970 Fender Twin Reverb. Was what I cut my teeth on in the tube amp world, and looking at references in other amps, just this whole input section of the Loredo makes absolutely no sense. Everything from I think that's C51 on just doesn't need to be there at all. And you can see down here is our knob that was labeled gain, and it is basically a distortion circuit that comes off this op amp. And this is just ridiculous. So the guitar signal comes from the jack through that little network, and then is on the input side of the op amp, and then all they're doing is they have the chassis ground right there tied to the middle of the gain pot. And if yes, this thing apologies for my phone, it does not focus well. I believe there are some other YouTubers have choice phrases for that sort of thing. So on one side of, if you turn the gain knob all the way as far as this schematic is concerned to the right, which would actually, I think, yes, be turning it all the way to the left, you ground out the output of the op amp, i.e. nothing makes it into the rest of the amp. Oh, thank you, focus. Anyway, so that would be no noise whatsoever. If you move it 180 degrees the other way, full opposite, what you do is you ground out the comparison side, the negative there on the op amp, and when you do that, the op amp itself is going to try to make all kinds of crazy voltages come out of the output to make up the difference between the input and the grounded, the comparison there, the minus. So whatever the difference is in the signal between the plus and the minus, it's trying to make crazy voltages come out. So in one position, we have absolutely no signal going into the amplifier. In the other position, we have the full output of this stupid op amp, when all I want to do is get my guitar signal going through here. Who needs, geez, this is crazy. Every effect should have a bypass, and this is not even a good distortion circuit. It's kind of a crappy one. Doesn't sound good at all. So, what are we going to do? Focus. Here we are. Our removal. Now, hopefully that will show up. So we're going to take out the entire thing. And then there is the first stage. That is the first triode of the first power or preamp tube. And we are just going to run our guitar signal straight into that, a la every great amp that's been made since the 40s. Hang on a second. Okay. So we are going to remove all that, and trying to get it to focus, and it will be replaced with something much simpler. Sorry about all the whiteout. A resistor! Oh yeah! So, in the old Fender amp days, there were two inputs on before this first tube. They were numbered 1 and 2. They were in parallel with each other, and so that lead resistor, depending on which one you put your instrument cable into, basically this resistance value would either be 30, what are my numbers? They're up there, 34K or 68K. So you get more attenuation with the 68K, and that means the rest of the amp's going to need to work harder to make the same volume output, but that making those tubes work harder is what makes the tube sound so beautiful. So there we go. That is our goal for eliminating the distortion circuit off of the preamp, which is going to make everything work the way it should. The problem is, now there's no volume. So how do you control volume in a preamp section? What we're going to do is, after the tone stack, this again was a common Fender design, was they would put a potentiometer in just before the second stage. This is the second triode in the first preamp tube, and they would put the volume control in there. So that's what we're going to do, and laugh at my horrible penmanship here. So the variable resistor, basically, if it's full volume, we're just going to pipe the output outside the tone stack onto our control grid, and if it's full off, we're shunting that to the ground, so no signal goes into the second stage of amplification, and the rest of the amp doesn't do anything. The real fun will be fitting that potentiometer into the chassis, because this is a 1 mega ohm variable resistor, and the old gain one was, what, 25K? Yeah. So, can't reuse it, got to replace it. And it's soldered into the circuit board, so we get to remove that. That's a lot of fun. Now, I have actually already modified this amp because it came with horrible tubes, and then when I put the new tubes in, I could find no way to bias it. So I actually talked with the manufacturer, and they gave simple sounding instructions of replacing this fixed bias resistor with a variable potentiometer and another resistor in series, and then just monitor the cathode current on the power output tubes, and target their goal is at idle 20 to 25 milliamps through the cathode there. So to measure that, because I don't have a probe or anything like that, they just said, oh hey, just add a couple of 1 ohm resistors in series and then just measure the voltage drop across that. So that sounded great, until I realized there is almost no physical space on the bottom of the socket. So that little removal there was harrowing, and in fact I thought I broke my amp when I did that, because you have to cut pins off the bottom of your socket. So that's a dicey situation, but I managed to fix it. So we're going to repeat that exact same situation here and here. We're going to have to cut the pins off the bottom of the socket and desolder them out of the circuit board in order to install a new wire that can then go to our circuit modifications. Printed circuit boards are perfectly functional for a guitar amp. And there we go, autofocus, yeah. Printed circuit boards are perfectly functional. They are nowhere near as fun as point-to-point wiring to modify, though, because, man, not a lot of real estate. So that's part of this series, too. We're going to look at how can you work with circuit boards like that and do some pretty drastic modifications. All right, so that's what we're going to do, and hope you enjoy it. If you've got any questions, comments, please shoot them down below. Thanks for watching. Let's see how this goes. Hope I don't break it.